Everyone, and welcome to Can I Just Say from Common Room Radio. I'm Elizabeth Stevens.
And I'm Daphne Olive. And today we are doing a movie that I hadn't seen in a long time, but I have all this nostalgia for. But I have reasons why I chose this after Little Women. The movie is Impromptu, which it seems no one practically except for me has seen.
It was hard to find. I had to rent it on iTunes. I think you can also rent it on Amazon. But yeah, it was a tricky one.
Yeah, it was a tricky one. So sorry, everyone, but it is on Amazon. I decided to buy it because this is what I keep doing.
Yes.
It's Amazon like, would you like to rent it or just buy it for a little bit more money? And I'm like, I'll buy it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, should I tell you my history with this?
Yeah, you go ahead and tell me your history of it, and then I'll tell you about my experience.
Okay, so it came out in 1991. I was in college. I loved it, and I still like it a lot. Like, I definitely like, I love this. There's some stuff here I don't love. But I still basically love it. And I was a bit of a brash menswear wearing person in 1991, and I remember I just wanted all of those suits. I didn't exactly want to be George Sand, but I definitely could relate to her. I think that's what it is a lot. And I don't know. That was my love of it. And it cracked me up.
Sure.
And it still cracked me up.
So I had never seen it before or heard of it until you mentioned it. I also didn't know about George Sand at all. I didn't know about the Chopin thing at all. So it was all just brand new for me. But God, so many people are in this movie. I don't know how I never heard of it. Like, so many people that I love so much. But I do think that the movie found me at the exact right time in my life, because I'm sure there are plenty of times in my past I've been like, what is this? Gross. And just, this is not for me or whatever. But I was so delighted by this movie. I was delighted. Thank you so much.
It is fun, and it's a great cast.
And it's meaty, too. There's just so much. There's beautiful language. The whole thing's gorgeous. There's so much interesting commentary. It's something else.
You have to also realize, I realized I IMDb'd him to check. This is the first time I remember seeing Hugh Grant. So, like, in my experience of Hugh Grant, this is my first Hugh Grant. He actually was in a movie that I saw that it did come out, like, a few years before this. This is something like
Lair of the White Worm.
Which I totally saw in the theater.
No
I remember that, too. When I saw it,
How
I don't
trippy.
remember him being in it. I don't remember anything about it except that it was fucking weird.
It's fucking weird.
Oh, you've seen
Yes,
that?
I've seen it.
That you've seen?
I don't know.
That's so random.
I don't know why.
So
it was
random.
just one of those that I saw growing up somehow. Like, I was into this particular kind of weird fantasy story I really liked. Like, I always loved Neverending Story. And there were a couple of other ones. Like, when I was a kid, this movie called Dragon World that I was really into. And I don't know. Anyway, but my dad was like, you need to watch Lair of the White Worm. It's really weird. And so me and my sister watched it. It's one of her favorites. It's one of her favorite, just like weird madcap B movies. She loves it.
That is so funny. I definitely, when I saw that on IMDb, I was like, holy shit, that movie. I remember that. I've never seen it since I saw it in the theater.
I remember almost nothing about it other than it just being so weird and trippy.
I don't remember. I'm trying to remember now which year that was. I don't know if I was in high school or if I was in college when that one came out, but I definitely saw this one in college. There was like a few towns over from Poughkeepsie. There was this wonderful, it still is from what I understand, a wonderful little town called Rhinebeck that back then had this itty bitty little movie theater, and we would all get, like, they were smart. They would send their, it was just like art house film. Theater. So it was like they would send their calendar to every student at Vassar so that we would know. And we would do this all the time. We would get in the car and go to Rhinebeck and go see a movie. Sometimes they would have movies where, like, the director would speak, like, really fun, and, like, go out for beers there. And it was just this great. And I know that I saw this there.
That's
and it was
crazy.
just,
how fun.
It was just like, So it was just like it was one of the fun moments in my college years that, probably a bunch of us went to go see it. And we were all like,
Yeah.
just...
No, that is so ironic. I got that email today from the Oklahoma City Museum or from the school saying, here are all the movies in November at the Oklahoma City Museum of Art. So that's so funny. And I was like, how much does that cost for a student? Because it's a lot if you're not a student. And that's why I've never gone before. But they're doing the documentary Tea with the Dames. Do you know about this?
Yes, I know about this. I'm dying to see it.
Yes, I'm definitely going to go.
It's going to be so much fun. Yes, I'm dying to see that as well.
Yes.
So that's my experience of this. It just like spoke to me, and I've seen it, I've seen it since then, but not recently.
Yeah.
And I just remember, and I think I brought it up when we were talking about A Room with a View because we were talking about what's his
Julian
name?
Sands.
Thank you, Julian Sands. And so it was like partly that, but partly because of our talk about like gender and creativity in Little Women. That was what I was like, we just have to watch this now so that we can kind of continue that discussion.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's what made me suggest this time.
Yeah, this is along a line of lots of things that I have been thinking about and that are really like my way of thinking and my worldview is evolving so much over the last couple of years. So that's what I mean when I say it found me at the right time. Like I was just...
That's so great. All right, well, maybe I made a list of topics, but like definitely feel free to take over.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I mostly just have notes and just a lot of general like ideas and questions. And it just made me... I don't know. There's so many just interesting themes to talk about, I feel like, just in general. But also, it's just gorgeous. It's gorgeous and funny and smart, and I loved it.
That's so great. Yay. I'm so happy. I really wasn't sure.
I know. It's like nerve-wracking, right? When you pick a movie for the other person, you're like, God, you might hate this. I hope that you don't. I hope we have plenty to talk about. This was a good one.
I knew there was going to be stuff to talk about. I just wasn't sure where you were going to fall in it. And it's a funny thing because like I definitely, a part of my love of this movie is 100% about nostalgia. Sure. Right. So then it's like you're never as good at judging a thing when that's a big part of your love of it.
Totally. Mm-hmm. Yep. I getcha.
All right. So where should we start? I mean, I put first on the list femininity and gender, which is a really big topic.
That's a big topic, but sure. I mean, yeah. God, there's so much here.
All right. Well, let's start with that because this is now exactly that thing where we have a woman who, for a variety of reasons, dresses as a man and exists in... I mean, you can't call what she's doing genderless. Like, what she's doing is extremely gendered, but she's
certainly subversive. She is...
Right.
God, what is she? Just very...
Right?
Very independent. She's just decided to pick and choose what she wants and what she likes. Like exactly. Oh, gender's a buffet. A little of this, a little of that. Like, it's pretty fabulous, actually.
Okay, now that's why I love her. Now I understand completely.
Well, we open up with that wonderful little prayer scene. I was already like, I love this. I love this.
Yeah, I knew you were going to love that.
Yes. Yeah, where she says, like, you, and who was she praying to? I meant to write it down even. Karaba?
Right.
It was before I got the captions worked out, but I'm going to look more into that, let me tell you. But this...
I forgot to look up what mythology that is from. Or maybe it's something she made up.
Exactly.
Who knows?
Like she could have totally made it up. Doesn't really matter. But would she say who inhabits both man and woman or something? Or, it's all right there for you right there in the beginning. But at first, when we had her switching to a dress, I wasn't sure that I liked it because it felt very much like she's playing into, trying to get Chopin's attention or whatever it is, which of course she was.
That is exactly what she was doing.
But when she went back and forth throughout the film, when she wore men's clothes and when she wore women's clothes, depended on all sorts of different things, all sorts of different like moods and events and where she was going and who she was talking to and how she felt. And she went out on a date with Chopin in full men's clothing. So I guess it's fine. Like, okay.
Well, and that's, I feel like, watching how she dresses in relation to Chopin has to do with like them finding a space where they have a common language. Once she stops having to try to figure out how to make him comfortable, like once they become open and vulnerable to each other, that's when they start. Sure. She learns and she is more herself. But yeah, it's really, really interesting. What I like best about the way the writing is and the way Judy Davis plays it is it never feels like George is that she's doing an act.
Right.
Like it never feels like George is like, oh, I'm going to be manly. Like, I think that the shooting the horse moment is really a great early moment for that, because you understand, you see all of the men interact with this horse thing, and she's just super matter of fact about it. She's like, I just need to do this, and you clearly, Mr. Hunter Man, can't do this. So I'm going to do it for you. And maybe just because he's sad about his horse. But, she's just like, okay, I got you.
Right.
And then I love that afterwards that Delacroix comes and starts drawing the horse.
Yes.
I just love it. It's like George is the one who's just like, okay, fine. I'm just going to shoot this horse for you now because this is what needs to happen. And then, yeah, it's just, but she's not being like, I'm going to be the manly woman.
No,
she's not doing that at all. She's really, it just feels like she is... It's an expression of herself, but herself also never exists outside of gender. Like, because, what am I trying to say here? I do think that part of George's, again, we're talking just about the characters. We're not talking about historical figures.
Right, which I know nothing about.
We can't speak. Right.
I know name
a
book that
very
George
little
Sand
about, right?
wrote, so we're good.
But, of course, part of her brashness, and you understand that later on when she does start opening up to Chopin after the second duel, part of her brashness is because she's had to be a woman in this world. But it's not, so it feels like a instinctual reaction that is part of herself. And then with him, she starts to let go of the part that has to be a reaction.
Interesting.
That's how it felt to me. Like when she admits to him, she's like, oh, I'm just bullshitting you about this whole, whatever she said, like the sublime thing about sex.
Yeah, like
right?
I've never actually experienced that. So,
that's what's interesting to me. That's what I like about the depiction, is that it's not that she's like, I'm going to be manly because that's how I succeed. She didn't have a gender offered to her in the culture of her time that would work.
Sure.
Like none of the options were right for her because the options were so binary.
They were,
she's
absolutely, yes.
So I feel like that's what's really neat, is that you really get that feeling from the story that she's somehow making her way in a way that makes sense for her.
Yes, I loved when we first met her children, and Claudette says, "Oh, you brought your two boys," and the girl takes her hat off and says, "I'm a girl." I'm like, that's fabulous. That was so powerful that they're just kids. Like, they're just kids. They're out running around blowing stuff up, and
boy, are they
right? Someone should probably watch those children. But what do I know?
So much time on the whole the weird ways that children play, and I kind of love that.
Yeah,
like you know what I mean? Like it was just like if the movie was done not as well, you would have been like, "What? Why are we?" Because it doesn't really serve the story so much. I mean,
no, other than just being kind of that exploration of human nature and about just the. Because you've got the genders, and again, things were so binary then, but also the class gap in those kids.
Right.
But they're just kids. Like when at first they had him tied to the tree, the little Lord Fauntleroy boy, right? So they've got him tied to the tree, and I think, oh no, they're going to pick on this poor little aristocratic kid. But he's like, oh, my dad's got gunpowder. Like, yeah, let's go play. And untie him like immediately. So they're just, they're all just kids, and in the same way, like they're all just people.
So it doesn't, the gender stuff doesn't feel outdated to you. That's what I was like, huh, like
surprisingly
this came out.
Not. I was shocked by how much it
so
didn't.
Interesting.
I loved when Claudette dressed as a man for the first dinner party, and she was like, I feel quite the bully. Love it. It's so good.
Yes.
And the other thing I thought that was addressed quite beautifully was Marie and her being, I loved all of the breastfeeding, and I loved how they kept on saying, she would have these lines as she was breastfeeding, like, they're draining the life out of me, or I'm empty, I don't have anything left. and just this idea of children and women in that time and birth control. And it's just talking about so many things. It's talking about so many things, and quite beautifully. And the moments where she turns around and tries to be modest about breastfeeding, the moments when she doesn't at all, was all just really fascinating. Marie was a fascinating character. I really was so frustrated that she kept making me hate her so much because I wanted to sympathize with her so much more. Her situation sucks. It's so pitiable.
Her situation sucks, right?
God, she's also the worst. Sorry, we can get to that later, but...
Yeah. No. I mean, that is part of this discussion. I'm like, part of me is very uncomfortable with the Marie character, and part of me is very sympathetic to her as well. Like, it is hard to be, in this world of freedom and creativity when you're constantly pregnant and or breastfeeding. Yes. Well, and often. So it really makes, it is showing that is very difficult. Mm-hmm. I think that the criticism of Marie, what's interesting about the criticism of Marie from the story is not about her being a woman or using her feminine wiles, which she definitely does.
Or attempts to anyway.
The criticism of her goes to one of my other topics. The criticism of her is the idea that she wanted to be a muse. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole other discussion that we should have.
I was going to say, which I really want to have that conversation later. So let's table that. But yes.
But I do think that a lot, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I think it's List.
I think List. Yes.
He kind of sucks. So I think a lot of the gender stuff is just because he's crap. But they're pretty crappy as a couple.
They're pretty crappy as a couple. I love List, I have to say. But no, I love him, but he's doing that thing that I just I understand that this guy is a terrible partner and a terrible husband, but I still like him.
I like him when he's with his friends.
Yeah, when he's with his friends, with Chopin.
Kind of makes him Yeah, but that makes him crappy guy.
No, absolutely. Certainly crappy relationship guy. Everything about him and Maria is fucked. They're a messed up couple. They're super dysfunctional. It's bad. Yeah. No, I would not recommend him to a friend. No. But the character I found fascinating, just very interesting as...
Oh, absolutely. No, he is interesting. Yeah. And again, it's important to have someone like him who is I can be creative as long as I don't take any responsibility for my actual life.
Interesting. Let's circle back to that too. Okay. First we're still talking gender stuff, right? Okay. So Chopin.
It's all gender. That's the thing. It's almost impossible to talk about
gendered.
any topic in this without talking about gender. Yeah. This is a film about gender.
Let's talk about Chopin.
Okay.
Do you like him?
I find him very sympathetic. Do I like him? Yes, I do like him. I think I do like him. Yeah. Because I think he's honorable.
Yes, certainly so.
Again, by our dinner party standards, I'm not sure he's the guy I would want. We do see him at dinner parties. He's not the person I'd want to sit next to. I'd want to sit next to any of them before him.
Delacroix, I also really love.
Oh, yeah, no, Delacroix is by far my favorite.
He was until
we don't see any demands.
They all there's anyway. Yes, go ahead.
They're all very flawed.
There's lots of problems. Yes, so
I would actually love to be at a dinner party next to him and what's his name? Where is his name? And Alfred. I would like to sit between Delacroix and Alfred.
I just want to be at that fortnight. I want to be there. Yes, please. Yes, please.
It would be fun to just watch them all be a little wacky together.
Oh my gosh, it's such an interesting premise. Which again, we'll get back to that when we talk about patrons and the arts and etc. But yeah.
But I do enjoy how with George and Chopin, I like how the gender roles, or the stereotypical gender roles, are in a lot of ways swapped, but not in a way where it is saying, hey, look, we're gender swapping. You know what I mean? I feel like it was more subtle than that.
Yeah. It was just their personalities.
Right, exactly. And that's what it is that we have two people. And I guess that's kind of what I was saying about George to begin with. It's like it's not that she's like, I will be a man. It's that she's like, I am the person that I am.
She's not compensating for anything. You don't get the sense that she has a chip on her shoulder about it. She's just herself, and she's just has just decided not to play by their rules.
Exactly.
Which is really lovely.
Right. And I don't think Chopin has decided not to play by anyone's rules. If anything, he's like Mr. like, wait, but there are rules here. But his natural state or whatever, his internal self fits more with where things would be gendered female in a story like this.
Sure. He's definitely very beta. She is clearly the alpha in all of her relationships and always has been. That's made very clear. It's interesting. Marie especially, and a few other people, describe Chopin as being womanish. Mm-hmm. Did you? I didn't feel like he was womanish in almost any sense at all, except that he wasn't so brash, I guess, as all of the men.
Well, but they do have, like, the first time they meet, I did actually write this down. She says, okay, I don't know where I put that down. I wrote it down somewhere. Mm-hmm. But she actually says, oh, I've insulted your
modesty.
Your modesty, mm-hmm. Exactly. So, like, usually when we talk about men in that period, you would talk about honor, and women, you would talk about modesty.
That's an interesting distinction. Yes.
And again, I don't know if that's actually true of the time. That's true in the storytelling of in this kind of story where it's not a comedy that's actually commenting on this kind mm-hmm. of story.
Interesting.
But when we usually see people from that period, the gender roles are such that men talk about honor. I mean, that's what Malfi is. Like, yes. He's like, God, the guy who's like, let's duel, honor, honor, honor. And so it's just very interesting that that George, she understands, I think in part because she's a woman, like she understands, like she's like, oh, okay, have to now recalibrate how I look at approaching this person because now, I can't treat him like I do mm-hmm. other men. Doesn't do very well.
Right.
I mean, I think when Marie tells her to woo him like a woman, that's Marie trying to sabotage her. I don't think that's
she
Marie
had already
actually
done it. She had climbed into his window, laid down underneath the piano, and then came on pretty goddamn strong, I felt. So yes. Marie was basically just saying, keep doing what you're doing. As far as I saw.
Well,
it.
Except that but then she reverted because
she had stopped
the
after
first
the
time she went in the window was before the dress.
That's true. Yes.
That was after she had fallen off the horse into the mud. So the first time was actually completely, like she just stumbled on him. She hadn't even seen him yet. She didn't even know what he... Okay,
but she when she went climbing in through the window, was that not because she wanted to be closer to his music, just because she'd been like outside the door before?
She was running away from Malfi. It was after she had fallen into the water and she came back and she was a mess and Malfi had showed up.
Yeah, I guess because she had been outside the door where he was playing earlier with that like swoony look, I guess I just thought that at that time she heard him playing and picked that window specifically.
Oh, she might have. Yeah, she might have. But her like how she ended up outside of the house
just that
was
she
to
decided,
run away.
Yeah, I'm going to go hunt down Chopin. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Fair.
Well, and it's easy to imagine. I mean, I guess the way I always assumed is like that she comes on strong in the beginning, partly because she's just passionate.
She is definitely very passionate. Yeah.
So she's just like had this revelation the first time when she just heard his music and didn't see him, when she was in that salon in Paris with the woman who clearly had the hots for her dad.
Oh yes,
It was like there's the moment where that woman's like where the Countess is talking about her father, and then like suddenly a fire flames up in the background, and I was like, the humor in this movie is like, it's all done well. Like if it wasn't well done, I would just be like, oh, seriously, really, we're gonna have like an explosion of fire right when she's like reminiscing about George's dad. Totally works. All those moments work for me. They're so goofy and also wonderful. So I feel like then she retreats. Then she puts on a dress and she tries to, write a letter, put on a dress, do these more subtle things. And it's then when she comes back to Paris much later that Marie's like, oh, you need to like basically stalk him.
Yeah, sure. Are we going to call that letter subtle?
Okay, no, not subtle in terms of, no. Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm giving George Sand a bit of a hard time because she's a little crazy pants as a
she's
wooer.
She's a lot. She's a
extra,
lot,
as the kids say.
Yes, but
sorry, packed myself up there.
I think why I'm calling the letter subtle is because she chose to put it into a letter that could be handed to him, and she even asked Marie to hand it to him.
Okay,
so
she dialed it back.
That was not. Because she had just had this experience of showing up in his room in the middle of the night. So she's trying as much. Again, this is the same thing with the dressing. It's just like as much as George is capable of putting a lid on herself, which is not very much.
As much as she can, she does.
Exactly. Well, and again, you get the feeling from the story that like up until this point, she's never had to, because most men's response to this woman who's just like, hi, I'm moved by you. Can we have sex now? Is like, yep, absolutely. We could just
Definitely
do that right now if you'd like. So she's a little, she's been thrown off by this man, and the rest of them, definitely seem pretty just like you can see. The rest of them would have happily had sex with her at any moment.
Yeah, definitely.
So this is, he becomes not just this like ideal in terms of the music, but also this, I don't know, ideal is what I'm trying to say about his disposition, but I think there might be some side of her that was like, this is, this is different. Like he allowed her, again, near the end, he allowed her to be more vulnerable.
That is true. I don't know how I feel about them as a couple. I like the idea of George Sand.
Well, historically, didn't actually work out in the end.
Frankly, because I like the idea of George Sand just kind of like having her affairs and her lovers, and like it seems to me that's the path that she has chosen.
I think that's right. I think that's the path that she ended up choosing. Well, and she even says that she's like that she loves so deeply and strongly as long as she can. Like she admits that she's just not capable of sustaining that.
Yes, which I think is quite gorgeous, especially if if everybody understands what they're signing up for, because that's the problem you get with Marie and Franz and Liszt is that long after that fire and that passion is gone, they've got the obligation to one another, which is how, marriages work and families work. And that's what keeps those wheels running.
Not married.
But they're
not married.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, that's the thing is like most women chose marriage, and, whether it was boring to them or not boring to them, like
for the protection.
You chose that road. Yeah. Right. And so you kind of trade off. I'm not trying to like gloss this over. For a lot of women in that time, it was horrible. But if you go outside of those bounds in that time, men did have the freedom to just up and leave. And George did somehow kind of, because she had a talent that allowed her to scrape together enough money. But most women didn't have that. And so someone like Marie, and there are many other stories like that are tragedies.
I think, Marie
where women,
is definitely a tragedy.
She is, but I'm just saying, if you, put that up against so many other stories set in that time or written in that time about women who did walk away from their unsatisfying but comfortable, economically, economically comfortable marriage.
Claudette and her guy, whoever he was, I don't remember his name. Yeah.
Right. So then you walk away from that and there's not really a path for most women to take then. And then there is also, the lack of birth control. So then you're taking that path and you just got to brood.
Yes.
Take care of it at the same time.
She was so resentful. She had that awful line where she said that now it's Judgment Day for George. She should pay for her sins like any other fallen woman. She can't avoid everything by being a man.
Yep. I also wrote that line down.
Yep. That was a zinger. Woof. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of resentment there.
Well, and I completely understand that. I understand that
I
resentment
get
100%.
I get her even. I just don't like her.
Right. I don't think you're supposed to. I mean, I like looking at it now, I'm like, okay, so, but she's the symbol of femininity. Is the message of this film like that really the only path is a path like George? But actually don't think that's true. I don't think the show's, I don't think the movie's saying that.
Yeah. I didn't get that
Right.
anyway. No, I feel
Okay,
like
good.
the comparison with Marie was less about gender than it was about exceptionalism, about artists and muses.
Right.
Yeah, that was where she
All right,
really
so maybe
suffers.
we should
move on to
maybe
that?
we-
I have so
maybe-
many things to
Yeah,
ask
we
questions
might as
and talk
well.
about. Okay.
Yes, I agree. Well, that's what I said also. Like, there's this whole thing about people feeding on the talented, and that's,
Okay. Tell me more about that.
well, you know, when they do fight in the end, like when she and Liz
Whatever.
fight
Yes.
in the end,
Friends. Julian Sands.
that's what she says. That's what she says. All I wanted was to, you know, to kneel at your feet and basically and be your muse. I don't think she says that.
To inspire you is what she said. Inspire you to write music. So, yeah, that's the same thing. Yeah.
Right. And I have mixed feelings about that aspect of the film. I can never decide. Every time I watch it, I go and I'm like, I'm going to decide this time who I think this film is mocking. And it might be mocking everyone.
I wouldn't even say that it was mocking so much as it is just exposing.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I think that the play that they put on is like, that's the artists mocking the wealthy, but it's also the whole situation is actually very critical of the artists.
Yes.
Doing it.
Yes. Yeah. No, and I suppose that's what they mean was like they're very even. They're blaming both parties, I think. The writers, the production itself seems like that I definitely feel very much on Chopin's side when he's like, I'm not going to be a part of this. Like, this is just rude and uncomfortable.
Right. Because of graciousness.
Yes.
Like, just, it's that simple. Like
Yeah.
that. Right. I'm also a proponent of basic graciousness. Like, whatever talent level you have, it's actually important to just be a good
to
person
just not
too.
be a
Like,
dick.
no matter how much money you have or how much talent you have, neither of those things are an excuse to be bad.
Completely agree.
The part that I find interesting in all of this is the moment when George and Chopin do start talking to each other and having a relationship, and he's talking about the impromptu and how he's torturing himself over the impromptu. And I love that. I mean, I love the idea of working, you know,
I know,
this is a thing, like you working so hard to make something seem effortless. I love that he says to her, well, don't you torture yourself for the right word? And she's just like, not really.
Yep.
And she's not saying I'm too much of a genius to need to do that. She's saying this just isn't like, I just do this shit.
That's not how she
like,
works. Sure.
Right. And I feel like that's I can kind of relate to that side of her as well. And I probably did even back then, but like, this is a thing I have as a designer. Like, I always define myself as a designer, not an artist.
I was going to ask you that question if you defined yourself as an artist. A designer, not an artist. Okay. And why is that distinction important?
Because I don't see what I do as conceptual. I see it being about aesthetics, I don't think, sorry, for the people who are listening to the podcast who don't know what I do, I'm a jewelry designer.
Incredible jewelry too, by the way. Incredible
Thank
jewelry.
you, sweetheart. So I see what I'm doing when I'm designing jewelry is, and it's not about craft versus art. I actually hate that conversation. That's like a thing that craftspeople and artists are both kind of obsessed with.
Interesting. I can see that.
But what I do is almost always, aside from actually my last line, is like completely based on aesthetics, and which is not me like trying to belittle what I do. Like, I think that's very important, and I think that there is a craft that's very serious and a process very serious about creating things that are have balance and grace to them. But what I do is not conceptual. So it's not saying anything. It's not, it's coming from my love of beauty and not from a place inside of me that like speaks to who I am. Does that make sense? It's like, it's what I do.
Yes,
it's
but
not,
it's not like an expression of yourself.
Right.
It is not
it is not
holding a lantern
self-expression
out, as Liszt said.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, so I think I can really relate, even though she's a writer, and I generally think writers are doing the other thing, but there's still different ways to do everything. And so I just related very much to the idea that she's just doing it because she has an urge to do it, and she's not torturing herself.
Right. Sure.
Although it's funny, I do actually torture myself over like the actual designing, but it's still, it's
well, and the
these are
designing is
distinctions that are very weird.
Yeah. Well, very personal, I think, more than weird. But the designing is also inspired, wouldn't you say? The only lines I have seen you create, or recently, maybe not the only, but I've certainly seen you be like specifically inspired by a concept or an idea or a book or a person or...
That sometimes happens, but I'm not saying anything.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Like
make
something
sense.
will spark it. Something will like put me down a road, put me in a direction.
But you're not trying to like reach humanity and like further. Okay, no, I get that.
No, it's completely internal. I mean, it's funny. I design jewelry, so it's something people buy and it's something people wear. And it probably, like, I am so into when they buy it, if it means something to them.
Sure.
I'm super into that. I love that. People have told me what the designs say to them, but it has nothing to do with me. Like, I have whatever idea popped into my head, and then I have a process that's very... very much about lines and shapes and stuff like that. But it doesn't feel like it's whatever the spark was might be something very personal, but the actual designing is also very personal, but in a different way. But it's just about like pure visuals.
Yeah, I think I get that. That's interesting.
So that's what I was saying. It's just very interesting. Like I felt like that was a really neat distinction, and I don't think that has anything to do with that. Has nothing to do with gender or anything like that. That's just a different part of this film, and it's just this beautiful moment where they're having a conversation about creative process, and how different people do that differently, and it fits their personalities. That each of them has that way of doing it. And it's possible that George, like what she says, has to do with the fact that, you know, also this thing like that we were saying, that she's just kind of explosive all the time.
Definitely.
So perhaps that's how her writing worked too. It just explodes out of her.
Right. Well, we don't get much insight into her process, and what we do get, we get secondhand. So because
a lot of that.
Yeah, because Alfred talks about her process and her work a lot, and how she writes her 20 pages a night, and
well, you have to take into account that he's also a writer.
That is very true. Yes.
Right?
Yes, who obviously thinks of his work as art, social commentary.
Right.
Like he's very passionate and very tortured.
Right. And also I think very competitive with her. They have the same publisher. She just...
Yeah. Absolutely.
So he feels threatened by her personally because they had been in a relationship, and he's worried about exposure. Clearly, way more worried about it than she is.
Yes, yes.
But so, like, I think we know who has more to be embarrassed about in their relationship. So he's very worried about exposure, but he's also very right. I felt like just constantly feeling competitive with her.
Yeah. No, there was a lot of competition with George. With Marie and Alfred, I was surprised not to find it from Claudette, because when Claudette first came down the stairs wearing men's clothing, I thought that she was also going to have this kind of like competitive energy with George, but it wasn't that at all. It was quite the opposite.
No.
In fact, it was a celebration. It seemed like
sisterhood.
Yes, yeah. I like Claudette very much.
I do too. I really like. She's great.
She is great. In theory, like in the ideal level, which of course nothing ever is, but I like the idea of that sort of patronage too, of just when she first brings them to the house and she crowns them with laurels and says, you're the royalty here in my house. And here's, when she shows Delacroix the studio for him to paint, and isn't the lighting just great and perfect? And she's clearly very, she's got her little theater. Like, she's very respectful of the work that the artists do. And then we see where she makes these little velvet roses, and she's very like, I have a little bit of talent, and doesn't want to show her painting at all. She's just lovely.
But she's a person who does all of those things.
She
like,
does
that's
them.
what
she
I love.
appreciates them. Yeah, she's just not
exactly
extraordinarily gifted in the way that these other people are.
She might be. We have no idea, honestly.
Okay.
We honestly have. It is actually possible. I mean,
it is possible she's undiscovered somehow, but it's
well, she's just taken a different path in life. It's not unlikely, actually.
It's pretty outside the text, I think, but yes.
It is outside the text. But I guess this is just my commentary on it. It's just like she didn't take that path. And I think this is where I am maybe a little critical of this, not of this film in particular, but this idea of genius. Is that there are a lot of geniuses out there who just didn't choose that path because maybe they were worried about being poor, or maybe that, just a million reasons why talented people take a different path.
Do you think that extraordinarily talented people should be like, what do you think about like the MacArthur Genius Grant and this idea of like, here's a free space, your room and board that Delacroix had, like everything is paid for, just make art, just make things.
What do you mean by should?
Did I say should?
You said, do you think that artists should? And then you explain that stuff, so I'm not sure what your question is.
Be given that sort of license, I suppose. They should be provided for because of the provision that, because of the work that they do, because of the nature of their work.
Yeah. Oh, I totally do. I mean, I think that if somebody... it's
not just like sell a painting for a lot of money, but rather like, no, your room and board and food are taken care of so that you can like work and create, whether or not those things bring in an income.
I love the idea of a culture that has a space for that. I don't think that art should have to be have a market value necessarily. Some does.
Right.
I'm not sure if I'm understanding your question. Like, you're asking whether I think like that should the government offer that, or should
I don't know,
like random rich people offer that?
Just in general, like is it a thing that you've? I don't know. I guess I'm just asking how you feel about that. If you think it's valuable and a great idea and it should be.
Yes, I'm in favor of art.
That I know.
I am in favor of art. I don't think that art should be driven by capitalism.
Yes, there we go. Now we're getting to the question. I'm sorry.
Right. I think it is awesome for people like me who can, for whatever combination of factors, end up making a living, doing their creative thing. I don't think that everyone who has something to offer to the culture in that way will be able to make a living at it. Those things don't always align. I mean, this, now we're getting into like policy questions. Like, is that more important than feeding people? Yeah. No, it's more important to feed people.
Exactly. Sure. Well, which is why I tend to think that it's not, with very, very few exceptions, like maybe certain like true obvious like genius level, prodigy level people, maybe there be some kind of like federal money set aside, but really it feels like it should be.
Well, there is.
There is. Well, I'm talking about shoulds. I'm talking in shoulds though.
Yeah. Not enough, but yeah, there is. There should be.
Just how much it should be prioritized, I suppose.
Right.
But I feel like just from a humanitarian perspective or humanist perspective, I suppose, that it does seem, I don't know how to phrase this even necessarily. I guess I'll go back to what you said, that it does seem, or I do wish that the culture nurtured artists more in that way, like that it was expected, and that someone who was incredibly talented would have no doubt that they would be able to do the work that they wanted to do and survive.
Right.
I mean, not and be,
right,
flown to Paris every weekend, but just
sure.
And have groceries in the refrigerator, and
right. I mean, this is why deep down I'm a socialist. Like, I do think it would be better for everyone to have food, shelter, and health care.
Right.
First. Like, that would be my first
everyone,
goal for a society.
Whether or not you're an artist
or
a
yes.
oil rigger.
So I would like everyone to have that first. That's actually my first priority. And then, yes, my later priority would be things like that. But see, the flip side of this, because I am a person who enjoys great art. I am also definitely a person who, and I guess I was, exposing that a little bit when I was saying that Claudette could be, I'm a person who also believes that there is a lot more capability of art generally amongst people than what our culture allows for, because we are told that there is genius, and only genius should be nurtured. And I don't actually subscribe. I mean, I do, there are people who are more talented than other people. This is true. I think that overall, everyone benefits from creativity and from being open to that. And I'm very much against the outlook on art that it is only for the genius, and that it only should be for the genius.
The creation of the art?
Yeah, or the space to do it, or the value. I mean, I just, this is something we see in education. Like, I actually when I was in college, I taught art to kids as like part of my studies. And, it was like, even in elementary school, wow, we're really going off the rails with this one. And
this is
totally
what I liked
fine.
about
We're just
this movie. There was like, there's
super,
so much to talk about.
Philosophical,
yes.
Right. So yeah, let me tell you a story. This is my story that I always tell that's like really illustrates this for me, is that, I was teaching in a local school, third graders. And at third grade, generally kids are still of the opinion that they all get to do art.
Yes.
That it belongs to them, that they're allowed to do it, they're encouraged to do it. And you can literally watch that broken of them. Like, you can watch the culture tell them that only some of them are allowed to continue with this. And so I had a moment like that where a boy who actually was extremely talented in many ways, like he was just one of those kids who was just like really, really just had a lot of sparks of stuff going on inside of him that just, I just watched them be broken off each time because he was not the best behaved kid. And there was a moment where there was the teacher they were doing quilts. So I was at the art class with these kids, and they were doing these quilts where each kid was supposed to do a panel for the quilt. And he did his on the wrong background. Wrong color, the wrong color background of his panel. And she threw it in the trash. And this is the art teacher, I took it out of the trash, and I showed him how, like, the thing in the middle, the thing that was like the art, like the drawing inside of it, I was like, okay, well, she wants this to be on yellow background and not green. So let's just cut out the green around your thing and then slap that whole thing on a yellow background. Yeah. And it was that simple. It was that simple. Like, that moment of choosing not problem solving was the moment where I just saw it in his face, where he was just like, fuck this. This isn't for me anymore. And I feel like, again, this is not to say there aren't people who are like above and beyond, but like, my ideal cultural attitude about art is that art is a part of everyone's lives, and no one is taught. And the only reason I think that's not true now is because we are taught that there are geniuses and only the geniuses should continue. Like, the minute you hear a person say, I can't draw. Like, listeners, raise your hand if you're a person who says, I can't draw.
I can't draw.
I'm sure it's so many. You can draw. You can draw. I brought your daughter a book that teaches anyone how to draw, and you should go grab that book and start doing it. I am not joking. Everyone can draw because drawing is seeing. Drawing is not like just the actual mechanics of drawing things that you see in front of you is about training yourself to see. It's not about genius. And so like...
Okay. All right. Because that is drawing as opposed to art.
Making.
Okay.
Right. Exactly. So there's the difference between... But I'm not saying that drawing, it's like cooking, right? Do you believe everyone can learn how to cook?
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Not everyone is going to make exactly. And not everyone's going to be able to make up their own recipes, and those recipes will be sublime. Right. But we all believe that we probably can learn how to like fry an egg.
Yes.
And that's the difference. The difference is that in our minds, art and music and theater and all of these things
are special and set aside for special people.
And exactly. That is exactly what I'm trying to say. Which again is not, I always have to like say over and over, I'm not saying there aren't geniuses. I'm not trying to be like everyone is the same. But everyone can reach a level of proficiency in these things for them to be enjoyable for them and for them to enrich their lives.
Yeah. But in order to do that, you need time.
You do.
And,
right. So that's the other part. But you don't even need like, honestly, you don't need that much. Like you need a lot of time if you're going to be Picasso.
Or a lot of talent.
You need
Picasso is a hard one to pick. Let's
okay. Or Delacroix, whatever. Like whoever.
Obvious genius, maybe. But yes.
But you don't need a lot of time or money to sit down with a pencil and a piece of paper and have the soothing experience of drawing for a few minutes every day.
Yeah.
Again, or writing a poem. Or, playing an instrument, not that great. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be Chopin to play the piano and enjoy it. It's just the minute that someone tells you you do have to be Chopin to be able to have the right to play piano. There's no dichotomy here.
I think that's everyone particularly true of visual art. Like, with music, it's less true because there are plenty of people who just like sit around and play guitar or play a little piano or do whatever. But I think you're right about visual art. Like there are very few people who just like, oh, I dabble in oil painting, but I've never been to an art show with them. Like if someone's going to take the time and the money that it takes to do oil painting, they're going to also usually.
Again, not necessarily. There are just a lot of people like, I went to the beach this summer, and my friend who's a sociologist decided he was going to paint. I mean, he draws sometimes and stuff, but he was just like, bought himself a bunch of paints and a canvas, and he painted.
That is so cool.
Right?
Yeah, you're right. I would hesitate because I would feel that like imposter syndrome. I would feel that like, this is not for me. I am not trained. I am not talented. This is for someone else. Yeah.
Right. This is for someone who
I'll
will
write
be
you
a genius
poem.
at it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like there's many layers to this. Like I would like to live in a world where everyone was nurtured to the point and the culture believed in this idea that there is just a basic benefit of doing creative works.
Yes.
Even if you're never going to do anything with it. I'm doing air quotes. Radio air quotes right now for that. But like even if you're not going to do that, you still like, just like you like baking a cake or whatever it is you like doing that are things that we think everyone's allowed to do. So it's the same with those things. And in addition to that, I do think that the culture, again, once everyone's fed and clothed and has shelter and health care, then I do think that should be a common value because I think we do all benefit from the creativity of the people, right? Right. So that was a big speech.
That was wonderful. No, that was so good. It led me to another question. Do you think that if someone is what we're calling a genius, so which just means like
sure, we'll just keep using that word.
Use
whatever.
the word genius to mean like someone who is exceptionally talented. Do you think that person has an obligation to society to do the thing that they are so great at?
No, absolutely not.
Interesting. I do certainly believe that they should not be coerced into doing it against their will. But
oh, good. I'm so glad you believe that.
well, I mean, I feel like that one's pretty obvious. I'm just saying it feels to me somewhat obligatory. Like if you are excellent at something and you just decide, I don't really care. I'm going to watch, King of the Hill. I feel like you're kind of being what are you being? That's a good question, because I value my freedom so much. Like I value my freedom. So and obligation is like the death of creativity. Like it's just the death of it. So you really can't force somebody's hand to do it anyway.
No, you can't. I mean, in a just society,
right.
You cannot.
Yeah, certainly. And I'm not even talking about like forcing someone to do it, but making it feel like a moral imperative, basically, like making it such a value within a society that, that it feels to be a moral imperative, I suppose. But at the same time,
I don't. Mm-hmm. I don't feel that way at all.
Just at all.
I really don't. I mean, I think it's nice if they do. It's nice if a lot of people do a lot of things, but I think that the people that we end up with their art for posterity are the people, who have whatever luck so that they actually do have
There's a lot of luck.
Shelter,
that's true. Mm-hmm.
Right? But they have to have both the talent and the drive. Right. And that you can't force drive. Yeah. And certainly a lot of them seem to have that combination. So it's like we get a lot of art.
Yes.
It's just like like the world has had a lot of art. And I'm sure, again, like I said, there are probably a lot of people who are super talented for whatever reason are not doing whatever it is they're super talented at. And yet we're still getting lots of good stuff.
Yeah.
So you don't know about those other people, so it's just like it's
don't know what you're missing.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like you're getting all this other stuff,
and I mean, and even now, there's not nearly enough time to like see every painting, read every book, hear it's never going to happen anyway.
Right.
So
right. I mean, it's I see this a lot with Black Sails, like the fans really want the creators to make another show. Right?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And I completely understand that urge. And, when we love something, we want the person who made the thing we love to make more because we loved it. That seems like a very natural response. Yeah. I mean, we wouldn't want to like chain them in a room and make them do it, or even like make them sacrifice other important parts of their lives for the sake of it. They have to have those two things. They have to have the spark of the creativity and the drive and the opportunity, all of those things, and the opportunity to do it. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's where I stand on that. If somebody wants to turn their back and just like go like lie in a hammock for the rest of their life, like if they can do that,
more power to you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel that way about like voting. I think everyone has to vote. That I
good luck.
Right. But as far as doing creative works, I do think it's a person's right to just not do it.
Yeah. No, it's certainly their right to just not do it. I suppose, yeah, it's a very philosophical, moral question. Mm-hmm. How do you...
But yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Like, you're like, if you have a gift, you should share it. In the very, very, very abstract, I see what you're saying. But then it is actual people.
Yeah,
it is never abstract.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's what makes it an interesting topic, I suppose, because it's so easy to say, yes, if someone's super talented, they should absolutely do that work and share it with the world. But as soon as you say, oh, so should I force them to then? Oh, God, no. Like, immediately you have to backtrack.
Exactly.
So it's just an interesting thing to...
Well, also, and you have someone like Chopin. Like, you have someone who's like, it's not easy. Like, it is often... I mean, again, it's not hard like coal mining. It's a different kind of hard, but it's very emotionally draining. It's a lot of things like that. That's another aspect of it is like when, a lot of artists are sacrificing their peace of mind, often their health, it's just like there's a lot of, they just go through a lot. And I know that's something that's, that is glorified, this idea of the tortured artist, but it is actually also a thing.
Yeah.
Like it's not.
It's tropey for a reason. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So so, we have to take that into mind too, that we are enjoying the benefits of what may be a very torturous process for the person doing it.
I'm going to read the Liszt quote from the dinner party.
Okay,
you know the
great.
one, I'm sure.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I do take note of moments like when we're watching anything, I'm like, yep, this is for Elizabeth.
Quote this. Yes. So he says, certainly it is difficult to find God in our age, and artists are the only hope, but we shall locate him again. We are a search party, if you like, of orphans with our emotions as a lantern in the dark. I liked this whole conversation that they had at the dinner party. I thought it was really great. Mm-hmm. But this was what was so interesting to me about Liszt, is that Liszt was one of those artists who works very, very differently from George. George is she just sits down, she writes the words, she puts out the book, she does her thing, she goes about her day, she has lunch. And Liszt is feeling incredibly creatively frustrated by the world. Yeah,
by the world around him,
by responsibilities, and by kids crying and people interrupting and somebody at the door and the doorbell ringing and whatever it is. And I do understand that. And I guess because again I value freedom so much, like I feel like for him, I feel like he gets a pass. I feel like he should, I know that's unpopular.
Now I understand.
I know it's not. Wow. It's problematic. It's problematic. I'm happy to say that.
No, it is what it is. You love artists more than I love artists. I think. I mean, I think I see artists more as just like everyone else. But yeah, I really do.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I don't.
I mean, again, I love art, and I think art is important, and I love the idea of art being a road to some higher state, higher whatever, however we're going to...
Yeah, well, it says like a path to God or finding God, but I think even the way he was saying it then, because the argument he was making, one of the priests at the table or something said, aren't all artists atheists? And he said, no, we're not an atheist. And agnostic, as I think what he ends up saying. But this idea of searching for God is less about searching for an actual deity and for a higher power than it is searching for like a calling in mankind, I suppose. Or
a universal truth.
Universal truth is very good. Yes. Yeah, just a higher level of humanity.
See, and what I love, even though George is doing it to hit on Chopin, I like what she said the best.
Oh.
That it's artistry and science combined, because I actually see those things as very similar in a lot of ways, that they're both searching for...
She also called him an angel, remember?
She did. Mm-hmm. She did. Searching for some truth outside of ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, something bigger and something that connects us all.
Right. But I see, again, I don't think that artists get a pass. I really don't. They still have to be parents. They still have to be, or they choose not to do that.
I guess that's what I mean to say. Yeah.
Right. But he didn't choose not to do that.
But he didn't choose not to. No. But again, is that, I still don't understand exactly how birth control worked in that time. Was that
not?
It basically didn't, right?
It basically didn't.
This is what I'm saying. Sex is a very important part of just being a human person. It's just or at least for most people. And certainly for him, it was pretty clear, their relationship was very, very sexual. And I think that if they'd had birth control, they would have had a very different relationship.
Birth control is a great thing.
Yes.
Birth control is wonderful. Yes. And we have it and they didn't. But that doesn't give him a pass. He doesn't get a pass just because he's talented. Because you could then say he gets a pass just because he's a man.
No.
You wouldn't like it if I said that.
Of course not. But that's because there are
thank you
an equal amount of men as there are women. And I feel the same. Oh God. Okay. I'm going to expose myself to some super
serious
right
philosophical
now. But
difference
yes, if George Sand got pregnant and then said, "Oh God, where the hell's the nearest orphanage?" and then took it to a nunnery, I'd be like, okay. I see what you're doing here. Like, this is for, like, her artistry. Although, I don't know. We're not necessarily told that George Sand is as genius level as, like, Chopin and Liszt were. But assuming that she was.
But
assuming that this woman. What? You're laughing.
I'm just so amused. Like, you are now putting this, like, gradations of genius as if this is an actual. That there's an actual, like, test for this. Like, that these things exist
but you
outside
can't say
of.
that we don't know it when we see it.
Yeah, but why? But why is that more important than any other human quality?
Because it lasts so much longer. We're still listening to Chopin.
So what?
What do you mean, so what? So that's very important.
I don't think there are humans that are more valuable. I don't think there are humans that are more valuable than other humans ever in any situation.
Okay. I'm not saying more valuable.
No, but you are. You are kind of saying more valuable. The minute someone gets a pass from what you would normally consider their responsibilities to be a decent human, you are actually saying that that person has more value.
I don't know if I'm saying that that person has more value, but I'm saying that their work has more value. Like, you don't think that Chopin's work has more value than, like, I don't know, a jingle for a commercial?
I do, but I, like Chopin, don't think that excuses Chopin from basic decency.
No, certainly not basic decency. But
I think that treating the woman that you impregnated many times poorly is
that's fair. But that's fair. That's fair. It's the birth control issue again, where I'm just like, shit, that sucks. Like,
right. Birth control rocks. Thank goodness we have.
She's so awful. It would be so different also if she was like,
yeah, but but
it sucks.
So,
no, Jesus.
They're both awful. They're both pretty
awful. They kind of deserve each other, and they're stuck, and that's just going to have to be fine. You can just be jealous of George.
Exactly. And the fact that he's a talented composer and pianist does not make this somehow like he doesn't get a pass from being a decent human being, and he's not being a decent human being here.
Yeah, even though neither of them are. Yeah, I guess it just sucks. Like, their relationship sucks so much, and it frustrates me very much that it's costing his.
Well, clearly, it's not costing him that much because he runs away and goes and does stuff all the time.
It's true. Maybe he's just bitching about it.
Right,
it can't work like this. Well, clearly, you're working, France.
Right, exactly. I'm like, like, really, he just kind of sucks. Like, he's fun with his friends, clearly talented. And, I guess historically he was a patron of other pianists, like, as you kind of see him doing with Chopin. We don't know, what their actual relationship was like. But, no, I think he sucks. I mean, I think the story is telling us he sucks, like, because we see other options. Like, again, we have him compared to Chopin, who's a person who's like, I am brilliant. I also draw lines when it comes to compromising my decency.
He was very noble, very honorable.
We also see George with kids.
Right. Mm-hmm. Kind of. They were just like running around in the woods, but yes.
Yeah, but she like takes them places and like they are a part of her life.
True. It's true. Yeah. And I like her relationship with her mother very much too, which I think speaks to her own sense of being a mother.
Right. I mean, this is the thing. It's like whatever George is, she is a decent person.
Yes.
I don't think there is never a sense that she's not.
Yes. I love the scene. It's one of my favorite ones where Delacroix and Chopin are first talking after the letter. Mm-hmm. And he
defends
says,
her.
Yes. When Delacroix comes to George's defense and says the reason that she has all of these affairs is because she is so basically easy to love. Like, she's a very vibrant person, and she does love fully and strongly and fiercely and steadfastly and all these things that she said that she does.
Well,
wow, she loves. Steadfastly was the one adjective.
Well,
I was like, I feel like that word doesn't mean what you think it means.
Exactly. Totally agree. I was like, I'm with you to that word.
No, I haven't written a note where I'm like, is she steadfast? Is that a verb? Is that an adjective we're going to use? Yes.
She is a serial monogamist. Oh, have you never heard that term before?
It's been so long, but you're absolutely right. She is a serial monogamist. Yes. But yes, I love Delacroix's defense of her. And people, she's pretty clear. Well, I don't know if she's clear about it, but it is made clear because of her track record that people seem to know what they're getting into with her.
Exactly.
Yeah, like you understand.
And that's the other thing I like about her. Right. It's just like, okay, if this is, you know, this is what I have to offer. This is the thing I'm offering to you. Take it or leave it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And we get that great fight with Friends and Marie, come to think of it, where she's like, this is the decision that we made. I left everything. And now he wants out. And you can't get out. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And God, she's such a pitiable character. Her situation sucks. But God, she's the worst, too.
Right. But see, she also makes bad choices. I mean, she chooses, like, George is nothing but sweet and generous to her. I do love the fact that George walks into her house and immediately holds a baby every time.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. But
I love
of
that
course.
every time. The first thing that happens when the first time they sit together is Marie just hands her a baby, like, get this thing off of me. But, like, also when she comes in later, when she's wearing my favorite waistcoat with the flowers, she walks in and, like, takes the baby. It's just, like, I mean, of course, I also love to hold other people's babies for a minute and then be like, okay, here you go.
Yes, take this, please.
I did this myself already, and I'm done with that stage. So she's definitely in that place, but
yeah.
No, but I mean, it's like, so it is exactly that. Like, George is in a more comfortable place because she doesn't have infants. Yeah. She has older kids who are can go run off and blow up things in the woods.
Right. Yeah, but she went through all of that and she paid her dues. Yeah, no, that's a good.
She did.
That's a really good point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and they both were in the same position. They were both women who were married and left their spouses. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just love where this conversation has gone.
So really many things. Yeah, it's just there's so many interesting little philosophical rabbit holes throughout this movie.
Okay, I would like to talk about something else. Can I I have two topics still, and they might be tied to each other. Okay, I love when George goes to visit Delacroix the first time, and they're looking at his painting of the woman being devoured by the lion. Mm-hmm. And she says something like, well, she doesn't seem bothered at all by that she's being devoured alive. Mm-hmm. and then they have a conversation where she says something, well, I think she's the one who says, like, I'm sure it feels good to feel anything at all. One of them says that, and the other one says, even if it's teeth. Yes. And then that comes to when they're about to hear the music. Oh, right. When they're in the salon still in Paris, and Marie says, George, come sit with me. You know, all of those, you know, the respectable people are over there. And Marie's like, oh, I'm so glad I left them. And George said, I'm so glad I left them for him. And George said, for his teeth.
Oh, I missed that. Thank you.
Isn't that a great thing?
Yes.
I really love that moment. And that goes back to this thing of, like, you know, there's just this beautiful thread through it that, like, ties a lot of things. It ties the gender and ties the thing about the aristocracy and the artists and all of this. But this idea of, like, experience, of inhabiting the world.
Being in your body, which we get with Chopin.
In your body.
Yes.
So it does.
Yes.
Okay, that was my other topic. So I want to
Mm-hmm.
I want to go then to that conversation about Chopin. I mean, this also, at this stage in my life, that conversation moves me a lot. I guess I'll tell listeners another thing about myself is that I have rheumatoid arthritis, and it has been a burden I've had for a really long time now. I've had that for 20 years. So I do have moments where I can relate very much to what Chopin says, where your body is just not living up to the deal you thought you had made with it for whatever reason. And the idea of just kind of retreating into your head is very attractive when that's going on. And I loved how she drew him out of that. Like, and that's the moment when her trying to, whatever it is she's trying to do, like, feels like attacking, but I think she thinks she's trying to make love.
Yes. She's quite aggressive.
But Right. But the moment it stops being awkward is after they have that conversation. And I felt like that was this beautiful thing. And she offered him her strength. And she said, I have too much of it.
It was beautiful.
So it was like, for me now at this stage of my life, I look at them and I'm like, in that conversation, I'm like kind of both of them. Because I definitely, when I was younger, I was that woman. And like now I can kind of relate to what he's saying more too. And it's just really beautiful. But it's this beautiful meeting in the middle space where she opens him up to the point where he can kind of re-inhabit his body.
Yes.
And he gives her this space to have the empathy that I think was the one thing that was lacking. Like, she cared deeply for people. She loves strongly, but I think sometimes she was not so good at the empathy part.
Right. Well, she doesn't have lovers so much as muses, right? I feel like that gets back to that question of the muse.
Or like fellow combatants. I mean, it's hard to say.
Well, of course, because the two that we get from her past, she's already so over them. Like the love is gone. So,
but even the way she goes at Chopin, it's like it just feels so aggressive, but not aggressive. Like I'm aggressive sex is a thing. You could do that, but like there's something about it where it was like she kept trying the same tack, even though it was so obvious that wasn't working for him. And only after they had that conversation did she kind of gain the empathy that allowed her to have sex with him in a way that worked for him too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was just, it's a very beautiful moment. Like it's so interesting because I think, I can imagine that when I first watch it, when anyone first watches this film, you're like, how the hell do these two end up together?
It's true. Yeah.
But that conversation like makes it work. Mm-hmm. Does it not work for you? Like, again, I totally get what you say. Like, they were never meant to stay together, but I understand how this moment brought each of them to a place they hadn't been, and that meeting each other was kind of what each of them needed in that moment.
Yes, that is definitely true.
Because they're kind of each transcending their own, like the place where they were because of the influence
Which
of the
is
other.
great. Like, this is the great thing about those just kind of like surprising intimacies that we find with people, and when you just click with somebody, that's what makes that so magical. I didn't find it romantic, though, weirdly. Like, because it didn't, I kept on wishing that she would stop saying, I'm in love with you. Like, just say what it is. Just say, you inspire me, or I'm obsessed with you, or infatuated by you. Just, we don't have enough words, though, for love, I suppose, but.
I agree. We don't, actually. We don't have these variants that you just said in without saying multiple words.
Yeah, I just wanted her to call it something else. And him too, when she was like, do you love me? And he's like, God help me, I do. Well,
but I love it when he calls her sublime, right?
There
is
you
that
go.
What he calls her? What is he?
Superb.
See, that
is what he calls
superb.
Her. Superb.
That's what it is. And
yes.
That line works for me. Like, I believe him in that moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So for that, I love them as a flash in the pan.
Like you're the influence I needed in that moment of my life to bring me to a new place, and we will enjoy each other while going down that road together for the time we will.
Amen. Hallelujah. Yes. I like that quite a lot. And especially because
that was a whole lot of words. It's just not the kind of thing you say.
Yeah, exactly. I love you.
You don't say those words.
Yes.
Like, let me write it. Let me drop a contract here. Like, we will inspire each other. We will take each other to new places for this amount of time. And
oh, so funny. But yeah, it's so lovely to see when it, again, put next to Marie and Franz, who just don't have that option. They don't have that option because they have the children together and because she's given up so much to be with him.
Well, and I don't know if they ever had that. I mean, it just
that wasn't their agreement.
That's the thing.
I suppose.
She wanted to inspire him, which is very different than actually like seeing someone who inspires you to be something different.
That is very true.
That is the big difference between these two couples, is that she's a groupie.
Yes.
I mean, she's basically a groupie.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
And, sorry, I made that sound like it's a horrible thing. It's not a horrible thing to be a groupie, but it's not like what you want to base a lifelong relationship on.
Yes.
So I think
they are not
that's the big
a marriage
difference.
of equals.
Right. And it's not because it's...
Again, they're not married.
Again.
Exactly. But,
Right, whatever. They're not in a long-term relationship of
Right.
equals. And it's not because he's essentially better because he's creative and she's not. It's because they think that he's... Like, both of them have agreed to this idea that he is the genius and she is the maybe muse, but mostly groupie. And so that's an imbalance.
Yeah.
It's not because one of them is more talented than the other. And that's what that's I feel like the dangerous place you can go with this story is to say these people are talented, therefore they are worth more.
Right. I don't think
But it's because
that's saying that.
No,
I really don't.
I'm not saying you're saying that.
Yeah, no,
but
either way.
I'm
I don't think that, yes.
Right.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That is a
but
danger zone, but I think it's...
That's what it's exposing, is exposing this idea that because their relationship was based on an imbalance in their minds, in both of their minds, as genius and groupie, there was never a way for this to be a true partnership.
Right. Long-term satisfaction and sustaining.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
And George and Chopin, it is, again, it's not because she writes well or he plays piano well and composes well. Like, that's what brought them together. But it's who they are. Like, what ultimately has them become a couple is what each one is offering to the other in their souls, not what they are offering to each other in terms of the art that they do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I like that they do such different work too, because there's none of that competition, of course, that she had with Alfred, but there could also be a sense of, well, just like you see Chopin and Liszt when they sit down together at the piano.
Right.
He's like, God, you play my work better than I do, and which is
I love those two
beautiful.
together.
No, me too.
I love those
it.
two together.
And there's a romance in that too, capital
Yes.
R. But it's so interesting with these two that they do something so entirely different, like which isn't uninspiring to the other, but it's not like a collaboration. They don't collaborate together. They just inspire one another, which is quite lovely. It's a great movie, is what I'm saying. I really liked it.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I'm so glad. It's always been, I have this like little list of like little gems of movies that have always been important to me that I feel like no one's ever seen.
I had not
And this
even
is
heard
one
of
of
it.
them.
Yeah. No, we should talk a little bit about some of the more problematic things. Like, of course, we have Delacroix just completely assaulting Claudette.
right.
But then, of course,
Right.
she's into it, which, good God.
Right.
was
Consent
so done.
is an
Consent
issue
is
here.
a big issue here. Yep. George does
Like,
the same
across
thing
the board. We
board.
just have like a shitload of like not respecting. Right.
People say no until they mean yes.
Right.
And, yeah. It's terrible.
Exactly. I mean, yes, these were less developed concepts in the early 90s than they are now. Like the idea of an enthusiastic yes is a relatively new concept. It is a great concept. I wish we had had that language when I was in college. Yes, so that's like super problematic about it. I think for me that's the only real, that is the problematic thing. I can't think of anything else that bothers me about it. But yeah, that moment bothers me. And I think it does. It comes from a mind frame, not a rapey mind frame, but a mind frame of like, because he needed to wake her up.
Right.
Like this idea that she wasn't living her best life, and that he, with his passion,
With his mighty penis.
yes. He somehow, although I do love that at the end, she's like, yeah, I'm so sick of them. Like, they're so happy with you, boring husband.
Yes.
You're awesome. But yeah, that was a problem, that he's like grabs her, pushes himself on her, and she's like pauses for a minute, and then she's like, cool.
Yes. It was.
This is actually what I needed, to have someone grab me and force themselves
right.
on me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not good.
totally a problem. Right. It's just everywhere. Like George is doing it.
Oh,
just,
list goes for Marie's throat in that very last scene.
No, that's awful.
Awful.
And I know. And
Awful.
played totally for comedy.
Yep. Not good at all. He should have.
Yeah.
And it would have been so strong for him to just walk out. It would have been so strong. But...
Right. Exactly. And it's like, right.
And then they have her come chasing him out of the house like nothing happened at all. And it's just,
No, it's horrible. Horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Very bad choice.
There are very bad moments.
Just wanted to address those. But
no, absolutely. And I mean, I prefer if my lovely little movie didn't have those problems. And I think if somebody made them now, except this movie would never get made now.
Why is that?
It's for the same reason romantic comedies don't really happen that much anymore.
That ticks me off. I don't understand. What is... Yeah. I
mean, maybe that stuff will come out. I mean, it's the same like, quirky, movies from the 90s don't happen now. It's just like there's just a lot of types of movies that don't really happen right now.
Yeah.
There's just like there are a lot of superheroes.
Yes, there are a lot of $100 million movies.
And I love those movies. I just wish we had the other movies too.
Yeah.
All right, do you want to tell me your favorite thing? I don't know which one mine is. I mean, I know my superficial one, but...
I have a lot of superficial ones, including, goddamn, Mandy Patinkin. You're just so good in everything. You're so good, right? Mandy. You're so good.
I love that man so much.
We didn't talk about him very much, but whew.
No, but he's wonderful.
Luminous.
I love when the horse is shitting on her writing, and he's like, the horse is a critic.
Yes. No, he's fabulous.
He's just so wonderful.
Fabulous. I think my favorite part was that conversation I talked about between Delacroix and Chopin, where Delacroix stands up for George and helps him to see her and understand what she is and who she is. That was really deftly done. Also because Delacroix did it so tactfully, because he made Chopin feel... it wasn't condescending. It wasn't inflammatory. He was just helping him to understand the world a little better and to understand George a little better. It was really generously done, but also correcting. He was correcting him without he
does that a lot. Like he's the one who explained.
Yeah.
He explained about Chopin's lungs. Like he has a lot of empathy.
He does. Yeah. I liked that character quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. Except for the one thing.
Except for that one thing, which is it's just a trope, though, too.
Everything else about it is wonderful. Like, because I actually also I do like when he was like kind of chasing her with the painting, and then he said something kind of suggestive, and she ran away. I like that because if we hadn't had the other thing with the sex, that would have been just like a really clever way for him to make her go away.
True.
Which we all understand that they all didn't really want to hang out with the aristocrats. Right. They just wanted to be there. So that would have been a really nice, I felt like, if you see just that scene, you're like, oh, well, that's, this is just like, it's winking to us because we know his attitude about it. I just felt like that played well. And then the second scene.
She was such a lovely hostess, though. I was so mad by.
She was. She did not deserve that. She is a little absurd at the same time.
Okay. Yeah. But so are they.
No, absolutely.
Yes.
I'm not saying, but I'm just saying like, yes. And she's a little absurd. And again, I do think, there is the whole groupie aspect. I do think that there is a bit of criticism about that. And again, without an answer, because it's like, this is an ecosystem of patrons and artists.
Yes. And they need each other. And it should be something beautifully symbiotic. They do.
So the patrons do kind of have to be groupies.
Well, do they? I don't think that they necessarily have to be groupies because I don't.
But otherwise they'll just hunt. Otherwise they'll just hunt and eat their food and have their money and not do that.
No. I mean, I think that you can be a patron of the arts without being a groupie about it. Like, had she put the laurels on their heads, shown them around, and then said, all right, do your thing. I'm going to...
Right, I'll see you at dinner.
Yes, yeah. And not made dinner, so now come and entertain me. Although at the same time, really great, sparkling dinner conversation is really hard to find and valuable. And
absolutely. And that's why you choose who you're going to have at your dinner party, because you want them to blend well. And like, you and I have this long-standing joke about who we want to
sit
have
next
dinner with.
to. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So these things are all very fine lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think this silly little movie like really just goes into the weeds and is like, I want to, really wants to make us look at
Yes, it did.
Right. And we want to hang out with them. Like, as obnoxious as the artists are, we know that we value them. So we're essentially in the position of the patroness.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. We paid to see this movie so that we could watch these brilliant people be brilliant in front of us.
Mm-hmm. Which, again, everyone should win in a...
Right.
Ideally,
if it's done with respect.
And if everyone respects each other. That's the main thing.
Exactly. That's the thing.
You have to, and not just like tolerate the other person's position because you need them to survive for whatever reason. Like,
well, but that's Chopin. Chopin is offering that.
Yes.
He's saying,
I think Chopin
respect
is the
you.
only one in that room who we can really say is right.
Right. Well, and the model is a Chopin and George situation where it's like we are equals, even though we do different things and we have a different approach. We are coming at each other because we're choosing to be equals, versus Marie and Liszt, where they both agreed to not be equals. Yes. And so it's the same thing. So just like you said, a patroness could come from a standing of belief in her own position as the aristocracy and as a person who can offer, like, be gracious to offer this thing. So yeah, it's really about the mentality of it and how it's performed, which is, that's what things like the concept of graciousness, this is where they come from. Like they are norms that help us navigate things in a way that is comfortable for everyone and hopefully makes the social interactions better.
Yes. What was your favorite part, Daphne?
Oh, right. My favorite part. I just wanted to talk about your favorite part.
I had plenty.
Waistcoats.
Yes.
I just want all of George's suits. I really do. I love them so much. Waistcoats. I do. I love the conversation between George and Chopin after the second duel. I really do. I love the moment where they meet each other finally. Yeah. And the teeth thing, like, that was a relatively new one. Like, that was something I discovered this week.
Fabulous.
So the teeth thing's pretty great because it really does. It takes when the conversation is about experiencing and feeling and being. I like that conversation better than I like the conversation about genius.
Interesting. See, this to me, I think, is what makes. Is that distinction between artist and genius. Like, I feel like an artist is someone who experiences the world most fully and then expresses it back out, like shows their perspective of what they just took in and gives it back again. Like, that seems to be...
But see, that's something I think everyone can do. I don't think you have to have talent.
Everyone can do it. But people with talent touch more people and move more people.
Yes, that's true. But what I love about it is that it is something that the way that Delacroix is talking about it is that it's something that exists for everyone because everyone can fully be.
Yes. Yes. Everyone can certainly fully be and everyone can experience richly. Yes.
Right. And that will have a different expression for every person. And some people will just be, and it'll just be inside of them.
Sure.
And it doesn't have to have an outward facing expression.
Sounds peaceful.
Exactly.
No tortured soul there. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying is, like, when it comes to that, it becomes about a state of being that people will do different things with. Yeah. People who feel the need to then express back out from that will do that.
Yes.
And some won't.
Yes.
But that's really about them. That's not really, I mean, yes, they will affect culture or affect people around them, but it's just like, I see all of that as equally valuable because it's really ultimately about a state of being. And again, like the person who does that fully inhabits themselves and just is and experiencing and isn't outputting, that doesn't mean they're not inspiring other people. Like they could be the person that other people watch do that and are inspired by that.
Sure. That makes sense, actually.
So there's just there's so many like if the ultimate value is this sense of teeth is a weird metaphor for it, but this like this immersion in experience.
Yes, the heights and the depths.
Right. So if everyone's really doing that, then I believe that they're going to go in a direction that they were meant to go, whether that is creating art or just being like a kick-ass community member or whatever it is. And all of those things have value.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's what I love about that part.
Well, it's a gorgeous film. Thank you so much.
It is.
Thank you for this movie.
Yay.
Yeah, it was very. I want to see who wrote the screenplay and what else they did because.
Yeah. It is a woman who wrote it and a man who directed it. And sometimes I'm good and actually write down all these names, but I didn't this time.
Okay. IMDb's there for everybody.
But actually, that would be great. We should look at what else she wrote
because it's lovely. Yeah, there were great conversations, great relationships, just so many things explored.
And just wacky, wonderful characters.
Rich. And wacky, yes. Yes.
Yeah, wacky's a value. Like, I enjoy wacky.
Yes, I can tell.
If it's done well. Like, if that's the only thing you're offering, that gets boring really fast.
I agree.
But, like, this kind of wacky veneer we have over the whole thing just made it fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I adored it. I was just delighted.
Yay. All right. So you are picking the next movie. Will you tell us what we're watching next?
Speaking of somewhat wacky, but thematically rich, I love John Carney movies, and you have not seen any of them?
Nope.
That is so interesting. Okay. So we were talking about this a little bit today. I think that you will like Sing Street the best, but it's my least favorite. So Once is where most people start, and it's the one that really was like the little movie that
What is Once about? Is that the one where like they like play music on the street?
Yes, basically. Yes.
Oh, I remember it. Like it won an Oscar or something.
Yeah, and they made it for no money, and
I totally meant I was like, oh, I gotta see that movie, and I never did.
Just fell in love. It's just.
I remember
it
that.
Just has magic, and it's shot like. I mean, no budget. So it's handheld cameras most of the time, and things are a little bit out of focus sometimes, and it's just
So I'm going to watch that for context, but that's not what we're covering.
Watch that for context, but then we're going to cover one that's just a little bit more, we had talked about doing something, what did you say, triumphant? Is that what you said?
I think I said upbeat.
Uplifting, maybe something. Okay,
uplifting. That's what I said. I was just like, I need some happy right now. I need things that make me feel hopeful about the world right now.
John Carney movies are going to do it. All right, so watch Once. We will plan though on podcasting about Begin Again, which has Keira Knightley and Mark Ruffalo, and also Adam. What's his name?
Oh my God! How did I not see this?
I don't know. It's okay.
Wow.
And I will give you and our listeners a warning about the movie. I personally feel it has kind of a slow start, but it finds its feet, and it does that on purpose. The movie is called Begin Again, so it's doing this on purpose. Right. So just come along for the ride. Stick with it.
Okay.
Yeah. But there are the main reason I'm picking this one is because the woman, Keira Knightley, Greta, is fantastic, and I love her. So, and the girl in Once is a little bit milquetoast for me personally. So,
okay. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to both. I'm going to say right now, because we keep not sticking to 2 weeks, so I'm going to say this is going to come out in 2 to 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
I'm not sure
That's
which.
Sometime. We are very busy women.
Yeah.
Yes.
We are very busy women right now. Yes. So we will do 2 to 3 weeks, and also we are doing Black Sails commentary tracks for our Patreon supporters. Yes. So we did just do one of those as well.
That was a great time,
and we're gonna, yeah, it really was. And so we're going to continue to do those. So if you haven't watched Black Sails,
What are you
Watch
doing?
Black Sails.
What are you doing with your life face?
Right, exactly. Really, seriously. After all this time, just watch Black Sails already. And then, but don't watch them with our commentary tracks because we spoil everything.
Yeah,
and also, yeah, this is a show that you should watch the first time while doing nothing else. Just watch it.
Yep, in order.
I have rules.
Yeah, she really does them. Okay. Yes, and with that, thank you again so much to our patrons. God, it's incredible. It's incredible that people.
Yes. Thank you so much.
That people give us money to have these conversations and put them out there into the world. That's incredible. Thank you.
It is incredible. And tweet at us. Tell us what you think of this movie. We would love to hear it. Or email us. Even better. We love emails.
It's true. Yes. Which is what? podcast@commonroomradio.com.
It is exactly that.
All right. Look at me knowing stuff. I'm also on Instagram. I don't think I've ever said that before, but I'm on Instagram. I think I'm now Elizabeth Ray Stevens. That's Ray with an E, Stevens with a V.
I'm on Instagram as Daphne Olive. I'm on Twitter as Daphne Olive, and we're on Twitter as Just Say Podcast.
Just Say Podcast. That's right. Okay. Well, until next time when we begin again, I'm Elizabeth Stevens.
And I'm Daphne Olive. And I Just Say Podcast is a Common Room Radio production. For more information and our other shows, visit commonroomradio.com. To show your support, pledges of as little as $1 a month can make a big difference. Visit patreon.com/commonroomradio to pledge support and access bonus features that are just for patrons. And join the conversation by using the hashtag #CanIJustSay and follow us on Twitter @JustSayPodcast. We request that you keep your tweets respectful and positive, and you can always email us at podcast@commonroomradio.com. Thanks for listening.